He opened the front door, expecting silence. What he got instead was laughter. Real laughter. The kind he'd forgotten could exist in his house. Marcus Chen stood frozen in his own foyer, briefcase still in hand, listening to sounds that shouldn't be possible. His 4 daughters, paralyzed from a car accident that killed their mother, were laughing. And when he followed that sound to the physical therapy room, what he saw stopped his heart. 3 wheelchairs sat empty against the wall. His daughters, Sophia, Emma, Olivia, and Isabella, were standing. Not just standing, they were taking small, trembling steps toward the housekeeper's outstretched arms. The woman he'd hired 3 weeks ago to clean bathrooms was teaching his paralyzed children to walk. Marcus's briefcase hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the hallway. The sound made everyone turn. 4 small faces looked at him with expressions he couldn't read. Fear, pride, hope. He didn't know anymore. He'd stopped knowing his daughters the day the doctors said permanent spinal damage and wheelchair dependent for life. But before we go any further, if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The wealth and the wound. Marcus Chen built his empire from nothing. Son of immigrants who ran a corner grocery store in Queens, he'd clawed his way through MIT on scholarships, launched a tech startup in his garage, and sold it for $800 million before his 30th birthday. By 35, his net worth had crossed $2 billion. By 40, he owned a venture capital firm that could make or break Silicon Valley dreams with a single phone call. The Connecticut estate sprawled across 42 acres, 18 bedrooms, an indoor pool, a tennis court that never got used, gardens maintained by a staff of 6 that no one walked through anymore. The house had cost him $23 million. His wife, Jennifer, had picked it out. She said it was the kind of place where children could grow up with space to explore, where family memories would fill every room. She'd been dead for 18 months. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Jennifer was driving the girls home from their ballet recital. 4 daughters, quadruplets, 7 years old, still wearing their pink tutus and laughing about who'd done the best pirouette. A drunk driver ran a red light at 60 miles per hour. Jennifer died on impact. The girls survived, but their spines didn't. Sophia suffered a T11 fracture. Emma's injury was at T12. Olivia's spine compressed at L1. Isabella, the youngest by 4 minutes, had the worst damage. A complete fracture at T10 with cord compression. Marcus remembered standing in the hospital hallway while 3 different neurosurgeons explained, using careful words and sympathetic faces, that his daughters would never walk again. Mr. Chen, we need to prepare you for the reality. With injuries this severe at these specific vertebral levels, the nerve damage is simply too extensive. The girls will require wheelchairs permanently. He'd heard the words, but they didn't register, not then. He was still processing that Jennifer was gone, that the woman he'd loved since college, who'd believed in him when he had nothing, who'd given him 4 beautiful daughters, was never coming home. The wheelchair prognosis felt like background noise compared to that crushing truth. Weeks passed, then months. The girls came home from the rehabilitation hospital in custom pediatric wheelchairs, bright colors Jennifer would have picked: purple for Sophia, blue for Emma, pink for Olivia, yellow for Isabella. Marcus hired the best physical therapists money could buy. He brought in specialists from Johns Hopkins, from the Mayo Clinic, from Switzerland. He purchased equipment that cost more than most people earned in a year: anti-gravity treadmills, electrical stimulation devices, robotic exoskeletons designed for spinal cord rehabilitation. Nothing changed. His daughters sat in those colorful wheelchairs, small bodies still, eyes distant. They didn't cry anymore, didn't complain, they just existed in a kind of quiet that felt worse than grief. like they'd accepted that their lives had ended in that intersection, even though their hearts kept beating. Marcus threw himself into work. 18-hour days, red-eye flights to pitch meetings he didn't need to attend, conference calls at midnight, anything to avoid coming home to that massive house that echoed with absence. He told himself he was providing for his daughters, building their future, ensuring they'd never want for anything. But the truth he couldn't admit even to himself, was that he couldn't bear to look at them, couldn't face what they'd lost. Because looking at his paralyzed daughters meant acknowledging that all his money, all his success, all his power, it couldn't fix this. And Marcus Chen had built his entire life on the belief that everything could be fixed if you were smart enough and worked hard enough and had enough resources. Except this. So he hired people, physical therapists who came 3 times a week, occupational therapists, speech therapists, even though the girls could talk fine. It's just that they'd stopped wanting to. A full-time nurse, a daytime assistant, and a rotating cast of caregivers who lasted anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months before something went wrong. The surveillance system. The cameras went in after the 6th caregiver, her name was Patricia, mid-50s, came with impeccable references and a warm smile that reminded Marcus just slightly of his mother. She lasted 4 months, longer than most. Then Marcus's accountant noticed irregularities, small charges on the household credit card, prescriptions being filled that didn't match the girl's medical needs. When confronted, Patricia broke down, crying, admitted she'd been stealing pain medication, selling it to support her own addiction. Marcus fired her immediately. But what haunted him wasn't the theft. It was realizing she'd been high while caring for his daughters, while lifting them, bathing them, administering their actual medications. One mistake, one moment of impaired judgment, and she could have hurt them. Or worse. That's when he called the security company. They installed 47 cameras throughout the estate, every hallway, every common room, the physical therapy room where the girls spent most of their day, the playroom that never got played in, kitchen, living room, exterior doors, even the elevator he'd had installed so his daughters could access the 2nd floor. The system streamed live to his phone, his laptop, the monitors in his office. Motion-activated alerts, cloud backup, facial recognition, the works. Cost him $200,000 to install, another $15,000 per year for monitoring and maintenance. Worth every penny, because the cameras kept catching things. The 7th caregiver, Amanda, who seemed perfect until the cameras caught her on her phone. For 6 of her 8-hour shift, scrolling social media while the girls sat parked in their wheelchairs, staring at walls, fired. The 8th caregiver, Robert. Yes, he'd tried a male nurse, thinking a father figure might help, who got caught accessing Marcus's home office, photographing documents. Turned out he'd been hired by a competitor to gather inside information about pending investments, fired and threatened with prosecution. The 9th caregiver actually managed to sell photos to a tabloid, pictures of the girls in their wheelchairs, looking sad and abandoned, paired with headlines like, "Billionaire's broken daughters left alone in mansion." Marcus's legal team crushed the publication, but the damage was done. His daughter's suffering had become entertainment for people eating breakfast. By the time he fired the 11th caregiver, a woman who'd been secretly meeting her boyfriend in the house during work hours, using the girls' nap time as her personal romantic getaway, Marcus had stopped believing in people. Every night after the girls were in bed, he'd sit in his home office with 3 monitors glowing in the darkness. He'd pull up the day's footage and watch, fast forward through empty hallways, pause on moments that seemed off, rewind scenes that made him suspicious. He was looking for lies, for theft, for negligence, for whatever new betrayal was waiting to reveal itself. He rewatched footage of Patricia nodding off during the girls' afternoon session, rewatched Robert's careful glances toward the office door, rewatched Amanda's thumb scrolling endlessly while his daughters sat in silence, hungry for attention she wouldn't give. Control became his only protection. He couldn't control what had happened to Jennifer. Couldn't control the drunk driver who'd stolen her life. Couldn't control the spinal injuries that trapped his daughters in wheelchairs. But he could control who entered his home. He could watch. He could document. He could catch betrayal before it got too deep. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. The humble caregiver arrives. The agency called on a Thursday afternoon. "Mr. Chen, we have someone, but I need to be honest. She's not what you usually request." Marcus was in his office, supposedly reviewing a term sheet for a Series B investment. Actually, he was watching live footage of caregiver number 11 packing her belongings after he'd terminated her that morning. What's wrong with her? Nothing's wrong exactly. She's just different. Maria Santos, 42 years old. She's been a housekeeper for 20 years. No formal training in physical therapy or specialized care, but she's raised 4 children of her own, including a son with cerebral palsy. She's requesting an interview. A housekeeper? Marcus's jaw tightened. My daughters need medical care, not someone to clean bathrooms. I understand, Mr. Chen, but we're running out of options. 11 terminations in 18 months. Word gets around. Qualified caregivers are declining the position before we can even make an offer. They're calling it the Chen curse. The words stung because they were true. His reputation had become toxic in the caregiving community. Impossible standards, constant surveillance, serial terminations. No one wanted to work for the paranoid billionaire who fired everyone. "Send her tomorrow morning," Marcus said finally, "but tell her this is a trial. One mistake and she's done." Maria Santos arrived at exactly 8 o'clock Friday morning. Marcus watched her through the camera mounted above the front door. She stood on his doorstep in a simple gray dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, holding a small canvas bag. She wasn't checking her phone or fidgeting or looking around at the expensive cars in the driveway. She just stood there, calm and patient, waiting. When Marcus opened the door, she met his eyes directly. "Mr. Chen, thank you for seeing me." Her handshake was firm, her voice was steady, no nervous energy, no eager-to-please smile, just quiet competence. He led her to his office, gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat without hesitation, her posture straight but not stiff. Marcus pulled up her file on his computer, scanned the information again. "You understand this position is primarily about caring for my daughters, not general housekeeping." "I understand. They're paralyzed from spinal cord injuries. They require specialized care, transfers in and out of wheelchairs, assistance with bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, physical therapy exercises 3 times per day, medication management. It's demanding work." "I've been doing demanding work my whole life, Mr. Chen. You have no formal medical training." "No, sir, but I raised my son Miguel for 16 years, before he passed away 2 years ago. Cerebral palsy with severe spastic diplegia. I learned to do range of motion exercises, transfers, medication administration, seizure management, not from textbooks. From doing it every single day because I loved him and he needed me." Something in her voice made Marcus pause. Not defensiveness, just truth. "There are rules," he said. "Strict protocols. The girls' doctors have created detailed care plans. I expect them to be followed exactly. No improvising, no experimental treatments, no false hope." Maria's expression didn't change. "What do you mean by false hope?" "My daughter's injuries are permanent. Multiple specialists have confirmed this. They will use wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. Some caregivers come in here thinking they can somehow fix them with positive thinking or special exercises or prayer. That's not reality. I need someone who accepts reality." For the first time, Maria's calm facade shifted slightly. "Mr. Chen, I spent 16 years caring for a child. Doctors said would never walk, never talk clearly, never have a normal life. I accepted his condition. I accepted that some things couldn't be changed. but I never accepted that accepting meant giving up. There's a difference. Giving up on what? On joy, on growth, on the possibility that today might be better than yesterday, even if it's still hard. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He didn't want philosophy. He wanted someone who'd follow instructions and not steal from him or lie to him or sell his family's private moments to tabloids. I have cameras throughout the house, he said flatly. They record everything. If you're uncomfortable with that level of monitoring, this isn't the right position. I have nothing to hide, Mr. Chen. I do background checks, credit reports, social media searches, reference calls that go beyond what you listed on your application. That's fine. And I watch the footage every night. If I see something I don't like, you'll be terminated immediately. No warnings. No second chances. Maria met his eyes. Mr. Chen, may I ask you something? He didn't like being interrupted, but he nodded. When's the last time you spent an hour just sitting with your daughters, not reviewing their medical reports or talking to their doctors, just sitting with them? The question felt like a punch. Marcus's hands tightened on his desk. That's not relevant. It's completely relevant, because equipment and protocols and surveillance, those things help. But children who've lost their mother don't need perfect medical care. They need someone who sees them, who stays. That's what I'm hiring you for. No, sir, you're hiring me to do what you can't bear to do yourself. The words hung in the air. Marcus should have ended the interview right there, should have shown her the door, but something about her directness, her refusal to pretend or placate. It reminded him of Jennifer who'd always told him the truth, even when it hurt. Start Monday, he heard himself say. 7 in the morning, my assistant will provide you with the care protocols, medication schedules, and emergency procedures. Follow them exactly. No deviation. Yes, sir. And Mrs. Santos? Yes. No bonding. These girls have lost enough already. They don't need to get attached to someone who's just going to leave when this doesn't work out. Maria stood, picked up her canvas bag, and looked at him with something that might have been pity. Mr. Chen, children don't choose when to love. They just do. The question is whether the adults in their lives are brave enough to love them back. She left. Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at the closed door, wondering if he'd just made another mistake. That night, he pulled up the security footage from Maria's interview, watched her arrival, her calm demeanor, the moment when she'd challenged him about sitting with his daughters. He rewound that part, watched it again. When's the last time you spent an hour just sitting with your daughters? Marcus closed the laptop. He didn't want to answer that question, not even to himself. Maria Santos's first morning started with silence. Marcus watched through the camera in the physical therapy room as she entered at exactly 7 o'clock. The 4 girls were already positioned in their wheelchairs. The morning nurse had done the transfers before leaving. Sophia in her purple chair by the window, Emma in blue near the bookshelf, Olivia in pink by the therapy mats, Isabella in yellow closest to the door because she startled easily and needed to see the exit. They sat motionless, these 4 7-year-old girls who used to dance ballet. Their small bodies looked even smaller in the specialized chairs. Their eyes tracked Maria as she entered, but their expressions stayed flat. 18 months had taught them not to hope for anything from the adults who rotated through their lives. Maria set her canvas bag on the shelf and stood in the center of the room. She didn't immediately start the morning routine, didn't check the protocol binder or review the medication schedule. She just stood there, looking at each girl in turn, really looking. Good morning, Sophia, she said softly, then turning to each daughter in sequence. Good morning, Emma. Good morning, Olivia. Good morning, Isabella. None of the girls responded. They'd learned silence was safer than words. Maria pulled up a chair, not the rolling stool the therapists used, but one of the small chairs from the corner, and sat down so she was at their eye level. My name is Maria. I'm going to be here every day to help take care of you. I know you've had a lot of people come and go. I know you probably don't trust me yet. That's okay. Trust takes time." Still no response. "I had a son," Maria continued, her voice gentle. "His name was Miguel. He couldn't walk either. He used a wheelchair like yours. And you know what I learned? Wheelchairs aren't prisons. They're just a different way of moving through the world. They don't define who you are." Sophia's eyes flickered slightly, the smallest reaction, but Marcus saw it through the monitor in his office. Maria stood and checked the protocol binder, 20 pages of detailed instructions. Morning medication at 7:15, bathroom assistance at 7:30, breakfast at 8, range of motion exercises beginning at 8:30, following specific sequences for each girl. The schedule went like this, minute by minute, until bedtime at 7 in the evening. She followed it exactly that first day. Marcus watched her move through each task with quiet efficiency. She was gentle with the transfers, speaking softly to warn each girl before she lifted them. She followed the exercise protocols precisely, counting out the repetitions. She gave medications on time, double-checking dosages, but she also did something the other caregivers hadn't done. She talked to them, not medical instructions or basic commands, real conversation, while helping Sophia get dressed. "I like this purple shirt. Purple was my son's favorite color too. He said it was the color of royalty." While brushing Emma's hair, "Your mama did a good job choosing these soft brushes. My mama always told me that brushing hair is how we show love without words." While positioning Olivia for her exercises, "I know this part is uncomfortable, sweetheart. You're doing so good. Just breathe through it." The girls didn't respond, but they listened. That night, Marcus reviewed the entire day's footage. 8 hours condensed into a 2-hour review session. He was looking for mistakes, for protocol violations, for warning signs. He found none. Maria had followed every instruction. She'd been professional, competent, patient. And yet something about her bothered him. Not what she did wrong, what she did right. The way she spoke to his daughters like they were people, not patients. Like their opinions mattered even though they never voiced them. Day 2 started the same way. Morning greetings. Protocol followed precisely. But during the afternoon exercise session, Maria did something different. She brought music. A small Bluetooth speaker pulled from her canvas bag. She set it on the shelf and pressed play. Soft piano music filled the room, something classical, gentle, the kind of music Jennifer used to play during the girls' ballet practices. Marcus's hand hovered over his phone, ready to call and tell her to turn it off. This wasn't in the protocol. The girls had scheduled music therapy on Thursdays with a licensed therapist. Random music wasn't approved. But then Olivia turned her head. Just a few degrees, just enough to face the source of the sound. It was the first voluntary movement Marcus had seen his daughter make in weeks. He lowered his phone. Maria noticed too. She didn't make a big deal of it, didn't draw attention to the movement. She just smiled softly and continued with the exercises, letting the music play. Over the next hour, Marcus watched small changes. Emma's fingers tapped against her armrest, barely but rhythmically. Isabella's breathing shifted, matching the tempo. Sophia's eyes closed, and for the first time since the accident, her face relaxed into something that wasn't quite peace, but was close. That evening, Maria wrote in the daily log, "Music introduced during afternoon session. Positive response observed. Will continue if approved." Marcus stared at those words. She'd broken protocol, then asked for approval retroactively. He should fire her. That was his rule. No warnings, no second chances. Instead, he wrote back, "Music approved. Continue current approach." He closed the laptop quickly before he could second-guess himself. Day 5 brought another change. Maria started moving the girls' wheelchairs closer together during activities, not in their usual scattered positions around the room, but in a half circle facing each other. "You're sisters," she told them gently while repositioning the chairs. Sisters should be able to see each other's faces. It was such a simple thing, but Marcus realized with a sick feeling in his stomach that his daughters had spent 18 months positioned like furniture, placed wherever was convenient for the adults, never considering what they might want or need. When had he stopped thinking about what his daughters wanted? He couldn't remember. Week 2, Maria brought books. Not the educational readers the speech therapist used, not the picture books sitting untouched on the shelves. Chapter books, real stories. The Secret Garden, A Little Princess. Stories about children overcoming impossible circumstances. She read to them every afternoon after exercises, her voice warm and expressive, bringing characters to life. She didn't ask if they wanted her to read. She just did it, creating a routine, building something the girls could count on. And slowly, so slowly, Marcus almost missed it. The girls started responding. Sophia began making eye contact with Maria, just for seconds at a time, but intentional, deliberate. Emma's fingers stopped their aimless movement and started tapping in patterns, like she was trying to communicate something. Olivia's head turned to follow Maria around the room. Isabella, who hadn't made a sound beyond necessary responses in months, laughed. It happened during a silly voice Maria used for a character in the book. A small sound, barely more than breath, but it was a laugh. Marcus rewound the footage, watched it again. His youngest daughter, the one with the most severe injury, the one doctors said would never regain function below her chest. She'd laughed. He closed his laptop and sat in the darkness of his office, his hands shaking. This woman, this housekeeper with no medical training, was reaching his daughters in ways his million-dollar specialists couldn't. And it terrified him. 3 weeks in, Marcus found himself thinking about Maria constantly. Not romantically, nothing like that, but obsessively. Every business meeting got interrupted by thoughts of what was happening at home. Was she following protocols? Were the girls responding more? Was this real, or was he imagining improvements because he desperately wanted them to exist? He started leaving work early, not to interact with his daughters. He still couldn't face that, but to watch the live feeds in real time instead of reviewing footage later. He'd sit in his home office with the door closed, 3 monitors glowing, watching Maria move through the afternoon routines. She'd added stretching exercises to the regimen, not in the protocol, but similar enough that Marcus didn't stop her. She'd position each girl on the therapy mats and gently work their muscles, legs, hips, feet, talking the whole time. "That's it, Emma. I know it feels tight. We're just reminding your muscles they're still part of you. Gentle pressure, slow movements. Your body hasn't forgotten how to be strong, sweetheart. We're just helping it remember." Marcus started researching at night, medical journals about spinal cord injuries, studies on pediatric paralysis, recovery rates, neuroplasticity in children. He'd read until 3 in the morning, trying to understand what was happening to his daughters. One article stopped him cold. Early intervention in pediatric spinal cord injury cases has demonstrated remarkable outcomes when combining traditional physical therapy with consistent, patient-centered care. Children's nervous systems possess extraordinary plasticity. While complete recovery from severe injuries remains rare, significant functional improvements have been documented in cases previously deemed hopeless. The key factors: early intervention, consistency, and what researchers term engaged presence. Caregivers who treat the child as a whole person, not merely a collection of symptoms. Engaged presence. That's what Maria was doing. She wasn't just following the protocol. She was seeing his daughters, talking to them like their thoughts mattered, believing in them when everyone else, including their own father, had stopped believing. Marcus scheduled an unannounced visit from Dr. Rebecca Patterson, the physical medicine specialist who'd been consulting on the girls' care since the accident. She came on a Thursday afternoon, did a full evaluation of each girl, muscle tone assessments, reflex tests, range of motion measurements. Marcus watched through the cameras as Dr. Patterson's professional demeanor slowly shifted to confusion, then amazement. When she finished, she called Maria over. They spoke quietly, but Marcus had enhanced the audio feed. "Mrs. Santos, what exactly have you been doing with these girls?" "Following the protocols, doctor, and adding music and reading time. Why? Is something wrong?" "Wrong? No, nothing's wrong. But there's significant improvement in muscle tone across all 4 girls, particularly in Sophia and Emma. Their hip flexors are responding. Their legs are maintaining better alignment. This is highly unusual given their injury severity and prognosis. Children want to get better, doctor. Sometimes we just have to remind them it's possible." Dr. Patterson shook her head slowly. "I've been treating spinal cord injuries for 20 years. I've never seen this kind of progress in established cases. I need to adjust the official protocols to include whatever methods you're using." That night, Marcus pulled up every piece of footage from the past 3 weeks. He didn't fast forward this time, watched it all in real time, 8 hours a day for 3 weeks. Watching Maria on the floor with his daughters, watching her move their legs in walking patterns, left, right, the same rhythm over and over. "Your legs remember how to do this," she'd say. "We're just practicing." Watching her hold Sophia's hands and help her bear weight on her feet. Just for seconds. The girl's legs would shake violently, unable to hold her, but Maria would steady her. "That's it. Feel your feet on the ground. Your body knows what to do." Watching her with Emma, placing toys just slightly out of reach. "You can get it, sweetheart. Just stretch a little more." Emma's arm would extend, trembling with effort. "I believe in you." The fingers would touch the toy. "Yes, look what you did." Watching her sing to Isabella while doing range of motion exercises. Old songs, lullabies, the kind you sing to babies. And Isabella, who never made sounds, started humming along, quiet, off-key, but intentional. Watching her read to all 4 girls, their wheelchairs arranged in that half-circle, their eyes fixed on Maria's face as she brought stories to life. And sometimes when she paused, she'd ask them questions. "What do you think will happen next?" She'd wait, even though they never answered. "I think the garden will come back to life. I think broken things can grow beautiful again." Marcus opened a new browser window, searched for videos of children with spinal cord injuries, found rehabilitation centers, therapy sessions, medical documentaries. He watched case studies of kids who'd regained function. Not many, the statistics were brutal, but some, enough to know it wasn't impossible, just improbable. And somewhere in his chest, in a place he'd locked away the day the doctors delivered their prognosis, something cracked open. What if Maria was right? What if accepting reality didn't mean accepting defeat? He thought about the past 18 months, the expensive equipment gathering dust, the specialists who'd confirmed hopelessness, the caregivers who'd treated his daughters like fragile objects that might break if pushed too hard. No one had treated them like children who wanted to heal. Except Maria. Marcus pulled up footage from the girl's first day home from the rehab hospital, watched his daughters being carried into this massive house, placed in wheelchairs, positioned by windows where they could enjoy the view. Watched their faces, confused, scared, waiting for their mother who would never come. Watched himself stand in the doorway, frozen, unable to approach them. He'd hired people to love his daughters because he was too broken to do it himself. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Maria wasn't just teaching his daughters' bodies to remember movement. She was teaching their hearts to remember hope. And she was doing it with nothing but patience and presence and a refusal to accept that paralysis meant the end of possibility. While he'd been hiding behind cameras and protocols, she'd been showing up every single day. Seeing his daughters not as their diagnosis, but as 4 little girls who'd lost their mother and needed someone to believe in them. Marcus closed the laptop, sat in the darkness. For the first time in 18 months, he cried. Not the numb, hollow tears of grief, but hot, ashamed tears of realization. He'd failed his daughters, not by being unable to heal them, but by giving up on them before they'd even had a chance to try. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 weeks after Maria started. Marcus was in Manhattan for an emergency board meeting. One of his portfolio companies was imploding. Founder had been caught embezzling. Investors were panicking. The whole situation needed immediate damage control, the kind of crisis that used to energize him. Now he just felt impatient, wanting the meeting to end so he could get home and watch the afternoon footage. The meeting dragged on. Arguments about liability, about reputation management, about whether to sue or settle. Marcus contributed when necessary, but his mind was elsewhere. Finally, at 3:30, he stood up. "Handle it," he told his COO. "Whatever decision you make, I'll support." The room went quiet. Marcus Chen didn't delegate crisis management, ever. He didn't explain, just grabbed his briefcase and left. The drive from Manhattan to Connecticut took 90 minutes in traffic. Marcus spent it checking his phone compulsively, pulling up the live security feeds at every red light. The afternoon exercise session should be starting. He wanted to see if Emma would reach for toys again, if Sophia would bear weight on her feet, if Isabella would hum. He pulled into his circular driveway at 5:07. The house looked like it always did, massive, pristine, empty. He sat in his car for a moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Maria's shift ended at 6. He could go to his office, watch the afternoon footage, review everything clinically from a distance like he always did, or he could go see his daughters in person. The thought terrified him. Marcus got out of the car, walked to the front door, stood there with his hand on the handle. When had entering his own home become this hard? He went inside. The house was quiet, not silent. He could hear something from the direction of the physical therapy room. Music, maybe, or voices. He moved down the hallway, his footsteps silent on the marble floor. The door to the therapy room stood slightly open. Marcus approached it slowly, his heart hammering. He could see inside through the gap, could see the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, could see... He stopped breathing. 3 wheelchairs sat against the far wall, empty. His daughters weren't far in them. Marcus's stomach dropped. His first thought was panic. Something happened, an emergency. Where are they? And then he saw, center of the room, therapy mats, 4 small girls standing, not sitting, not lying down for exercises, standing upright on their own legs. Maria knelt about 6 feet away from them, her arms stretched wide. Tears streamed down her face. "Come on, my loves," she whispered. "Come to me. You can do it. 1 step." Sophia moved first. Her right leg lifted, shaking violently, hovered, came down 6 inches forward, a step. Marcus's hand flew to his mouth. Emma went next, both hands out for balance, her left foot sliding forward, dragging slightly, but moving. Forward, another step. Olivia's face was screwed up in concentration. Her whole body trembled with effort. But she lifted her foot, placed it, lifted the other, 2 steps, and Isabella, the youngest, the one with the worst injury, the one doctors said would never regain function below her chest. She stood there, legs shaking so hard Marcus thought she'd collapse. "You can do it, baby," Maria said, her voice breaking. "I'm right here, I've got you." Isabella's foot lifted, came down, another lift, another step, 3 steps toward Maria's arms. The phone slipped from Marcus's hand. He didn't feel it fall, didn't hear it clatter against the floor. His knees buckled. Marcus Chen, who'd stood firm through billion-dollar negotiations, through his wife's death, through 18 months of hell, his legs wouldn't hold him. He slid down against the doorframe, his back scraping against wood, until he sat on the floor in his $3,000 suit. His daughters were walking, his paralyzed daughters. The girls 3 different specialists told him would never stand, would never take steps, would spend their lives in wheelchairs. They were walking, and he was watching it through a doorway, like a stranger. The girls reached Maria. She gathered all four of them into her arms, pulling them against her chest, sobbing openly. Yes, oh, sweet girls, yes, I knew you could. I knew it. I've been telling you, haven't I? I've been saying your bodies, remember. Sophia buried her face in Maria's shoulder. Emma wrapped her arms around Maria's neck. Olivia was crying, happy tears, relief tears. And Isabella, quiet Isabella who never made sounds, said something, so soft Marcus almost missed it. We did it. We did it for you. Maria held them tighter. No, baby. You did it for yourselves. I just reminded you that you could try. Marcus sat on the floor outside his daughter's therapy room, and every wall he'd built since Jennifer died came crashing down. The grief he'd buried, the hope he'd killed, the love he'd locked away because feeling it hurt too much. It all poured out in waves that shook his entire body. 18 months of doctors saying never, 18 months of specialists confirming impossible, 18 months of him accepting it as truth. And this woman, this housekeeper he'd hired for $15 an hour, had refused to believe them, had shown up every single day with nothing but patience and faith and love, had sat on floors with his daughters, had moved their legs in walking patterns, had sung to them and read to them and treated them like children who deserved hope, had succeeded where his millions failed. Marcus didn't know how long he sat there. Time felt fluid, meaningless. Eventually he heard Maria's voice inside the room, gentle but firm. Okay, my loves, that was so good, but we need to rest now. Let's get you back in your chairs. We'll practice again tomorrow. Promise? Sophia's voice, clear and hopeful. I promise. We'll practice every single day until walking feels easy. But we have to be smart. Rest is part of healing too. The sounds of movement, Maria helping the girls back into their wheelchairs, adjusting blankets, smoothing hair, speaking softly to each one. Marcus tried to stand. His legs felt hollow. He gripped the doorframe and pulled himself up. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. He should leave, should go back to his office, process this privately. But his feet carried him forward, through the door, into the room where his daughters sat in their wheelchairs, exhausted and glowing. Four faces turned toward him. Maria stood up slowly. She'd been kneeling beside Isabella's chair. Her face was still wet with tears. When she saw Marcus, something crossed her expression. Not triumph, not pride, compassion. She'd known he was watching, had known and hadn't stopped, hadn't performed for him, had just kept loving his daughters. Marcus tried to speak. His throat closed up. The words wouldn't come. He stood there in his expensive suit, this man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals, completely unable to form a simple sentence. "Daddy?" Olivia's voice was small, concerned. "Are you okay?" That broke him. Marcus crossed the room on unsteady legs and knelt down, right there on the floor, dropping to his knees in front of his daughters' wheelchairs. He looked at each of their faces, really looked, for the first time in months. Sophia with Jennifer's eyes, Emma with her mother's smile, Olivia with that little worry line between her eyebrows, Isabella, the baby, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "I saw you," Marcus managed to say. His voice came out rough, broken. "I saw you walking." "Did we do good?" Emma asked hopefully. "Good?" Marcus's vision blurred. You did impossible things. You're doing impossible things." He reached out with shaking hands and touched Sophia's face, then Emma's, then Olivia's, then Isabella's, his daughters, his little girls. When had he stopped touching them? When had he let fear build this wall? "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Why are you sorry?" Sophia asked, confused. Because he'd given up on them. Because he'd hidden behind screens instead of being present. Because he'd hired people to love them when they needed their father. But he couldn't say those things, not yet. His throat was too tight. Maria moved quietly toward the door, giving them space. But Marcus reached out and grabbed her hand. "Stay," he said, "please." She nodded, stayed standing there, this woman who'd done the impossible. Marcus gathered his daughter's hands in his own, 4 small hands that had learned to bear weight, to reach, to try. "How?" he asked Maria, his voice breaking. "How did you know they could do this?" "I didn't know," Maria said gently. "I just believed, and I gave them permission to try." Something shattered inside Marcus, the last wall, the final barrier. He pulled his daughter's chairs closer and wrapped his arms around them all, hugged them like he hadn't since before the accident, felt their small bodies against his chest, breathed in their scent, felt their beating hearts. "I'm here," he whispered into their hair. "I'm so sorry I left, but I'm here now. I'm here." And for the first time since Jennifer died, Marcus Chen allowed himself to feel everything he'd been running from. The grief, the fear, the love, all of it flooding through him, breaking him open, putting him back together in a way that hurt and healed at the same time. His daughters were walking, not perfectly, not easily, but walking, and their father was finally coming home. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his daughters walking toward Maria's arms, not his arms, Maria's. A stranger had accomplished what his millions couldn't touch. A housekeeper with no medical degree had succeeded where specialists from Johns Hopkins had failed. And his daughters had said it, "We did it for you." To her, not to him. By 3 in the morning, jealousy had twisted itself into something uglier, something that felt like protective concern but tasted like poison. He called Maria into his office the next morning. She arrived at 7:15, still in her coat. "Mr. Chen, is something wrong?" "Sit down." Maria sat, her expression calm but watchful. "What you did yesterday," Marcus began, his voice harder than he intended. "Getting the girls to walk without medical supervision, without proper equipment, without their doctors present, it was reckless." "Reckless?" Maria's eyebrows rose slightly. "They could have fallen, could have injured themselves further. You're not a physical therapist. You had no right to push them that hard." "I didn't push them, Mr. Chen. They wanted to try." "They're 7 years old. They don't know what's safe." His voice was rising now, months of buried emotion pouring out as anger. "You gave them false hope. And when they can't sustain this, when their bodies give out because you pushed too hard, too fast, they'll be devastated." "Is that what you're afraid of?" Maria asked quietly. "That they'll be devastated, or that I succeeded where you gave up?" The words hit like a slap. "You're fired," Marcus said, "effective immediately." Maria stood slowly. No argument, no pleading, just that same quiet dignity. "I'll get my things." "Wait," Marcus's voice cracked. "The girls, don't say goodbye, just leave. It's easier that way." "Easier for who, Mr. Chen?" She left before he could answer. From his office, Marcus watched the camera feed as Maria gathered her canvas bag, took one last look at the therapy room, and walked out. The girls were still asleep. They'd never know she left. He told himself this was the right decision, the safe decision. Maria had gotten lucky, that's all. The girls would plateau, probably regress. Better to end it now before everyone got hurt. But when his daughters woke up and learned Maria wasn't coming back, the house shattered. Sophia stopped making eye contact. Emma's fingers went still. Olivia turned her face to the wall, and Isabella started screaming again, the way she had in the months after Jennifer died. Hours of screaming that nothing could stop. The replacement caregiver lasted 3 days before quitting. Marcus watched his daughters through the cameras, watched them sink back into that terrible quiet, and realized what he'd done. He'd destroyed the only good thing that had happened since Jennifer died. Not because Maria was dangerous, because she'd succeeded where he'd failed, and he couldn't handle it. It took Marcus 2 weeks to find the courage. 2 weeks of watching his daughters deteriorate. 2 weeks of the house returning to that awful silence. 2 weeks of Sophia refusing to try standing, of Emma pulling away when nurses touched her, of Olivia asking every morning, "Is Maria coming back?" And Isabella's screams that said, "What words couldn't? You promised people would stay." On a Sunday morning, Marcus drove to the address in Maria's personnel file. An apartment building in Bridgeport, 45 minutes from his estate, a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a broken front door buzzer. He'd never been to a neighborhood like this, not since before his first startup. The distance between his world and Maria's had never felt wider. He climbed the stairs to apartment 3C, knocked. A teenage boy opened the door, maybe 16, with Maria's eyes and a suspicious expression. "Yeah? I'm looking for Maria Santos. I know who you are." The boy's voice was cold. "You fired my mom. I need to speak with her. She doesn't want to speak to you. Please, it's about the girls. The girls you wouldn't let her say goodbye to." The boy's jaw tightened. "You know what you did? My mom came home crying, actually crying. She never cries. She loved those little girls, and you threw her out like garbage. I know, I was wrong. Being wrong doesn't fix anything." The door started to close. Marcus put his hand out, stopping it. "Please, I'm not asking as her employer. I'm asking as a father who failed, who's still failing. My daughters need her." "You should have thought of that before." The door slammed. Marcus stood in that dim hallway, staring at the closed door. He deserved this, deserved worse, but his daughters didn't deserve to suffer for his mistakes. He came back the next day, and the next. Each time the teenage boy answered. Each time the door closed. On the 4th day, Maria's sister opened the door, older, harder, arms crossed. "Mr. Chen, you're persistent. I need to make this right. You humiliated my sister, made her feel like her love wasn't good enough, like she was wrong for believing in those girls." "She wasn't wrong, I was. Please, let me talk to her." "Why should she listen? So you can fire her again when you get scared." Marcus had no answer, because she was right. "My daughters made something," he said quietly. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. 4 drawings taped together, stick figures holding hands. "Please come back," written in Emma's careful letters. "We miss you," in Sophia's handwriting. "We love you," from Olivia. And from Isabella, who still struggled with letters, just a heart. A big, crooked, perfect heart. Maria's sister stared at the photo. Her expression softened slightly. "Wait here." 5 minutes later, Maria came to the door. She looked tired, older, but her eyes were still kind. "Mr. Chen, Mrs. Santos, Maria, His voice broke. "I was wrong. About everything. I fired you because I couldn't handle that you succeeded where I'd failed. Because you loved my daughters when I was too afraid to. Because watching you with them reminded me of every way I'd abandoned them after their mother died." Maria listened, silent. "They're falling apart without you," Marcus continued. "Sophia won't try standing. Emma won't reach. Isabella's screaming again, and it's my fault, all of it." He showed her the drawings. "They made these. They asked me to bring them to you, to beg you to come back." Maria took the phone, looked at the drawings for a long moment. When she handed it back, her eyes were wet. "Mr. Chen, I can't come back just to be fired again when you get uncomfortable." "I know. Those girls have lost their mother. They can't lose someone else." "I know. So what's different? What's changed?" Marcus took a breath. I'm restructuring everything. Working from home 3 days a week. I'm canceling the overseas trips. I'm going to be present, actually present. Not watching through cameras, not hiding in my office. I'm going to learn to be their father again. And when that's hard, when facing what you've lost hurts too much, then I'll hurt, but I'll be there. While I hurt, I'm done running." Maria studied his face. "I have conditions. Anything. You spend 1 hour every day with your daughters. No phones, no work, no cameras, just you and them. Yes. You stop treating them like they're broken. They're not broken. They're healing. Yes. And you let them love you, even though you're scared, even though Jennifer's gone. You let them in." Marcus's chest tightened. That was the hardest condition, the one he didn't know if he could keep, but he nodded. "Yes." Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'll come back, But not today. You need to tell your daughters that you're the one who asked me to return, that you're the one who drove here and knocked on my door and didn't give up. They need to know their father fights for them. I will. And Mr. Chen, this is your last chance, mine and yours both. We're either all in or we're done. All in, Marcus said. I promise. Maria returned on Monday morning. Marcus had spent the weekend with his daughters, telling them he'd found Maria, that she was coming back, that he was sorry for sending her away. Sophia had cried. Emma had hugged him. Olivia had asked, "Promise she's really coming?" And Isabella had simply said, "You made it right, Daddy." When Maria walked through the door at 7 o'clock, 4 girls erupted. The house filled with joy, real joy, the kind Marcus thought had died with Jennifer. His daughters couldn't run to Maria, but they wheeled themselves to her as fast as their small hands could push, and when she knelt down they piled into her arms, crying and laughing and talking over each other. "You came back. We missed you so much." Daddy said he was sorry. "We made you drawings." Maria held them all, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here. I'm staying. I promise." Marcus watched from the doorway, not through a camera but in person, and he didn't feel jealous anymore, just grateful. Grateful that someone had loved his daughters enough to stay, and loved them enough to forgive him when he'd almost destroyed everything. That afternoon, he kept his promise. 1 hour, no phones, no work, just him and his daughters in the therapy room. Maria taught him the exercises she'd been doing, showed him how to move their legs, how to help them bear weight, how to be patient when progress was slow. "Talk to them," Maria said gently. "Tell them what you're thinking. They need to hear your voice." So Marcus talked about Jennifer, about how much their mother had wanted them, about how proud she'd be seeing them try so hard, about how sorry he was for disappearing, about how much he loved them. And his daughters listened, really listened, Chen. 3 months later, the girls were walking independently. Not perfectly, they needed braces and got tired quickly, but they walked. Down hallways, through the garden Jennifer had planned, into their father's arms when he came home each evening. Marcus kept every promise, restructured his entire life around his daughters, learned to be present even when it hurt, stopped hiding behind work and cameras and fear, and Maria stayed, not as an employee anymore, but as family. The person who'd refused to accept impossible, who'd taught 4 broken girls that paralysis wasn't permanent, who'd taught their father that healing required showing up even when it scared you. One evening, Marcus found Maria in the kitchen after the girls were asleep. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on them, on any of us." Maria smiled. "Mr. Chen, I told you on my first day, children don't choose when to love, they just do. The question is whether the adults are brave enough to love them back." "Marcus," he said, "please, just Marcus." "Marcus," she agreed. Through the window they could see the garden lights glowing. Tomorrow Marcus would take the girls outside. They'd practice walking on grass, on uneven ground, building strength, learning that falling down wasn't failure, getting back up was success. His daughters had taught him that. Maria had taught him that. And Marcus Chen, who'd built an empire on the belief that everything could be fixed with enough money and control, finally understood. Some things can't be bought. Some miracles require nothing but love, patience, and the courage to believe in impossible things, like paralyzed daughters learning to walk, like broken fathers learning to hope, like strangers becoming family. Outside, a breeze moved through Jennifer's garden, and Marcus could almost feel her there, watching, whispering what Maria had told him months ago. Broken things can grow beautiful again. His family was proof.